So welcome everyone to the KPMG session, and we are going to be talking about bringing automation on cloud security overall. So with us, we have got Cédric from KPMG. Cédric is an executive director with our KPMG Montreal and Quebec team, and has been involved thoroughly with cloud security initiatives, including other cyber works like threat hunting, DevSecOps, and vulnerability management. Again, Cédric has immense amount of experience bringing automation to cloud for our clients in Canada and globally. Cédric, with that, I'll hand it over to you to kind of take the audience through your presentation right now.
Thank you very much, Arani, for this introduction. I'm delighted to be with you today to talk about automation and, of course, DevSecOps. The flow of my presentation actually is pretty simple. We will start by trying to understand how automation has become more and more important in IT and why it has become so important. And then we will look in detail at scenarios where this automation capability can be used to set a standard, implement security controls, and also monitor these controls. In addition to implementing a security standard, we will see the interest of automation also to process security alerts to help to detect threats. And finally, the reward of this automation capability does not come clearly without a strong impact on security teams, especially in a DevOps context that is very popular with the cloud. And so we will talk about that. But first, let me give you some quick details about my background and the reasons why I became a fervent advocate of a more agile, automated, and development-oriented security. So, without surprise, I'm indeed specialized in information security, as you said, with an experience of almost 30 years in IT. Yes, I know, I'm old. For several years, I've had the pleasure of specializing in the cloud and to help our clients to secure their pipelines, to migrate their workloads to the cloud, and to implement effective threat detection. I have to say that my skills are mainly focused on AWS, Terraform, and all things around automation. In terms of past experience, I served about 20 years as an officer in the French Navy. I've got an anecdote on that. And then in the last 10 years, I had several experiences in Canada. But speaking about anecdotes, let me share you some experiences that really helped me in my thinking I've got today about security. First, my first experience in 1993, when I was working as and my Outlook is working, as you can see. When I was working as an IT analyst on the mainframe, I discovered a working environment when the need for new features had to wait for many months or even years before being satisfied. It was very stable, a very stable environment, very quiet. That's, I have to say, a good side. So that's a good side, but clearly it generated frustration from the business line who expected more innovation, of course. So I started to try to develop myself without developer skills, some pieces of code to compensate this lack of innovation. And it was my first observation. Functional needs are important and cannot be ignored. Development of functionalities, of new functionalities, must be promoted in the company. In 2001, September 11 happened, of course. I was the IT officer on board at this time of the Charles de Gaulle, the French aircraft carrier. And we sailed to Pakistan in the weeks after this event, this tragical event. I don't know if you can imagine, but there are a lot of security rules, safety rules in a warship. And one of them, no surprise, is that you can't drill holes between different sections of the ship. We can, I think it's easy to understand why. But yet, 1 week after our departure, my commander, and it's a true story, called me and asked me to set up with the means on board a wired local network from the bow to the stern. You can't do that without drilling some holes. So second observation, when faced with operational needs, security, as important as it is, will never have the last word. Security has to anticipate the operational needs. And yes, I found myself drilling holes to run RG45 cables in the middle of the night on board of a nuclear aircraft carrier. In 2017, I was stock manager in a large insurance company, and I was facing the same experience, the same reality experienced by many SOCs. Complex environment, many alerts to handle, and too few human resources. That's when I first tested the SOAR technologies, and began to understand that automation could give us both the flexibility we needed, and more importantly, the capacity I didn't have enough of. That was my third observation. And that's why today I'm speaking to you about DevSecOps and automation. So how automation has been empowered. There is currently a growing market appetite to increase the level of automation in companies. But what is the key fact that has increased this trend? What is this key fact? Of course, it's the cloud. Cloud is scalability. And through this, one of its characteristics, the elasticity, the scalability, capacity limits no longer really exist in our virtual data centers. This coupled with the emergence of microservice architecture results in a dramatic increase in the attack surface and the number of events to monitor, to control. The only thing that has not increased in this context of the cloud is the human capacity and specialized resource. And I'm pretty sure you will all agree with me on that. So the good news is that driven by these large cloud providers, a new ability to code actions that were once done in console has emerged. The provision of programming interface, these famous APIs, to do absolutely everything that is possible to do in console has become a standard, more and more present, not only actually for cloud providers, and it becomes a differentiating criterion in the purchasing mechanisms of new solutions. That's a good thing. And we can see an ecosystem of solutions of specialized language, which has been built around this automation. And that's the solution to this complexity of the cloud, I think. Infrastructure coding was the first beneficiary of this automation capability. Today in the cloud, you can code your network, your instances, as well as your databases. And the benefits are many, but notably the imperative aspect, which allows you to know precisely how your resources are defined. You don't have anymore to ask to your IT system administrator, what are the parameters used during the creation of the instance of the database. You just have to take a look on the code and everything is here. The immutable aspect, thanks to the use of a version control system, a Git, usually, which will archive each change made and which will be used to compare if deviations exist with the production, with the real world. The speed, of course, because executing code will be obviously much faster than if you had to do it manually, to manually fill in numerous interfaces in the console. And finally, traceability. Thanks to this Git, thanks to this version control system used, you will be able to track each change, and you will be able to make those responsible for each infrastructure change accountable. Very important. For the security, good news is what is valid, the benefit for the infrastructure is also valid for the security. And this is true to define security. This is true to exploit, to do exploitation of the security. And so both these two actions benefits from the gain in speed and traceability brought by the APIs. You can even imagine some very important gain on conformity, because with the conformity as code, as soon as your infrastructure is defined as code, ensuring the compliance of your IT assets with your corporate security rules, your standards, become possible in an automated way. For example, if you got a pipeline, a CI/CD pipeline, you will be able to insert security gates in this pipeline to confirm that all the new objects created by your developers are compliant with your standards, with your baseline. And you will be able to, also to confirm, to continuously monitor your production to be sure that your workload is still compliant in the duration, in the time. In detail, if we look at the use of automation to define security, we will find multiple scenarios. But the first thing, really, I recommend when you want to start to define your security as code, is to start is to define a set of controls that will serve as a security baseline to host projects. When you're moving to the cloud, first define your baseline and then code this baseline. These controls can cover many different areas of security, but all of them can be automated, which will give you some assurance of their consistency across all the projects and cloud accounts you will be managing. And we know that's very important. In reality, there are no real limits when it comes to implementing security controls via automation in the cloud. I mean, especially in the cloud. Deploying, for example, a SIEM like Splunk in less than 5 minutes to investigate security logs during an incident is done very well with code. And of course, it's inexpensive because it can be stopped at the end of the incident. Performing an access review, it's a pain. In the real life, it's a pain, the access review. But when all authorizations are coded, of course, it's much easier. And the beauty of automation is that not only are you going to implement security controls, but above all, you are going to be able to detect deviations, I talked about that previously, from your controls, thanks to permanently activated automatisms. I was talking about deploying a Splunk on demand. Well, these few lines of code you can see allow you to deploy this type of server. It's simple, and above all, it's a piece of code that you can reuse on demand without having to think each time you need it. Very easy. We were talking about also continuously monitoring if you are still compliant in the time. Here you've got a very simple scenario, but relevant, coming from an AWS environment. If you got this kind of very actually accurate rule, no RDP or SSH ports should be open on the internet. With the help of a service named config, AWS config, you will be able to monitor each change made to your security group. Security group are the firewall rules associated to your instances. And each time you will have a change, config will trigger a serverless code, a Lambda, and this code will confirm if it's compliant or not with your rule, the change. And if it's not, it will be able to revoke, to cancel the change. And sorry for that. And it will be able to even create a ticket to the destination of the development team to be sure that they investigate why did we have this, this deviation. Very simple scenario, but totally relevant. Of course, the ideal is to detect these violations even before the problem occurs in production. And for this, we are working more and more on a concept that consists of implementing security controls as early as possible in the development cycle. Thanks to the automation in the CI/CD pipeline, we can add security tests as early as the unit test and then functional test in order to ensure that the objects created by your developers in the cloud are compliant with your baseline. You've got some pitfalls to avoid. I mean by that, for example, adding too much checks in the CI/CD pipeline will slow down the delivery time of new version and can flood the dev team. You will be aware that the best people to take in charge security findings in the code are clearly your developers. It doesn't make sense to keep security reports on the code inside the security team. You have to share this kind of reports with your developers. And it's not only, of course, the applications, the applications that need to be tested, but also the infrastructure knows that this infrastructure is coded. That said, even with a secure infrastructure and secure applications, the threat is still possible, it's still there, and automation can help you to address that threat. Let me tell you some truths about your SOC. Maybe you know it, maybe you don't. It's based on a pretty recent survey, actually. 55% of companies receive more than 10,000 alerts per day. So, of course, 30% of respondents in your certain categories due to lack of time. Makes sense. And what is really incredible, only 41% of SOC analysts believe their role is to stop threats rather than manage just the flow of alerts. So, in face of this situation, adding more analysts in your SOC will not be enough. You can't just believe that adding human resource will solve this problem. Your SOC has to be helped, has to manage differently the flow of alerts to be able to face this situation. In a traditional SOC, we are used to work with the SIEM as a central piece, as a central solution. It's the starting point of an investigation. We use the SOC as a starting point. And this is a problem because even if it's a wonderful solution, the SIEM, I mean, the technology is interesting. It's a very good technology, but the fact is you are using use cases. You are dependent of the use cases implemented in your SIEM, and the reality is you never have enough use cases to take care of all the alerts coming in. So this approach leaves out many alerts that are not qualified by the existing use cases. I'm pretty sure you all experience that, having SIEM but not enough use cases accurate for your company. A new way to consider the SOC, to architecture the SOC, is to use a SOAR solution, to inject automation in your SOC. For that, we will consider the SIEM not as a central solution, but as another source of alerts. And we will investigate all alerts from this single console, which is the SOAR, with the ability to enrich each alert with all the security solutions you already have in your environment. And this is a position more and more popular, and actually SIEM providers are offering more and more SOAR capabilities today. Orchestration will be one of the main features you will use. You will benefit from the SOAR, from your SOAR solution. It's the idea to not have to connect to each console of all the security tools you already have in your infrastructure, but to let that work to the SOAR solution, to connect to all the console and to retrieve all the events around an alert, to be able to share to your analyst a very enriched context, and so to help him to reduce the duration of his analysis. You will reduce human time to detect thanks to the orchestration, and you will certainly reduce the number of false positives. For example, when you are having an alert coming from your EDR, you will be able to check in your anti-spam, and in your firewall to check if you got related logs close to these alerts. Automation is everywhere in the SOAR. It's the basement of the SOAR, but automation will help you to not only enrich and help your analyst to do his investigation, but automation will offer you the capability to react automatically to some event, to some alerts. So we will work also on the main time to respond, and not only on the main time to detect to threats. And that's very useful. And what is important to note is you can absolutely have some automated response, but with a manual interaction inside this playbook, this scenario. So for example, sending an SMS to confirm, to ask confirmation to a manager before isolating an endpoint. This kind of process can be automated, and the interaction is just for the manager to respond to the text on his phone, yes or no. That's it. Everything is done automatically after that. The SOAR can be within or external to your cloud provider. SOAR, more and more SOAR solutions clearly are available on the market. However, due to the high capacity of the cloud to be managed, to provide APIs, it's a very great use cases. We've got some very great use cases to code directly through serverless functions in the cloud, some reactions. And so I think it's more and more interesting to consider hybrid scenarios with the SOAR used for the detection, for the investigation, and to then use some serverless functions in the cloud for the reaction part. If we now focus on the impact on security teams, we must understand that with automation also comes a change in work methodology. Indeed, this automation in security is generally brought via the implementation of DevOps or DevSecOps initiatives. And it is indeed all these changes that must be managed with the teams, that must be prepared with the teams. You certainly know this famous graphic, the wall of confusion. When you start a DevOps initiative, you have to fight a natural tendency for production teams to look for stability in their infrastructure. That's fair. In the face of change requested by developers, that's fair too. So the first step is to break this wall between developers and production guys. But once it's done, once you broke this wall, you still have a problem in your DevOps initiative, because you still miss the security. I found a cartoon very funny about that. DevOps will be blocked by the security. So you will have to work on the integration of the security in your DevOps initiative, and then you will face a wall of mistrust, because security guys, and that's fair, want control. They need they need to constantly reassure themselves about everyone's action to reduce risk. That's their job. So to break this wall, to break this wall, it's very important first to not underestimate the impact. Adopting a DevSecOps approach means a lot of change, as you can see. I can recommend certainly to first identify a champion to help you in this process. This champion will help to advocate about this change within the team, to integrate as soon as possible some security specialists in DevOps teams, mix the teams, and work hard on establishing this first baseline we talked previously about, this baseline of security controls. In depth, the change you will have to implement in your security team are around 3 domains. First, culture. Culture is everything, and implement guardrails and not gates is a big change. The team has to trust in the guardrails and the threat detection processes in place to define a new culture based on visibility, hardening, and continuous monitoring. The skills, of course, skills will be you will have a lot of work on changing the skills, because security is not anymore a list of tools to manage through graphical interfaces. The security specialist has to learn how to code and how the cloud is working in addition to the usual security skills. It doesn't make sense to develop some security piece of code without a good understanding of the environment. You can't do that. And integration. Managing security from the castle, the security castle no longer makes sense and is the best way to create bottlenecks. So the security team must get closer to the project teams to better integrate these security controls, work very closely. To success in all this change, of course, you will also to prepare your management. So automation will lead, yes, to an evolution in the skills of security specialists, but it will also lead an evolution in the way security projects are managed. The waterfall mode, it's very popular in the security teams, the waterfall mode to manage the projects. It will have to be replaced by an agile philosophy. And management will be the first one to work on that. Automation, it's a great opportunity to leverage the ingenuity and creativity of your teams rather than systematically buying some new solutions. But as a result, keep in mind, the expertise will become an essential factor, and investment must be made in training resource. You can't anymore consider budgets for training in the same way you did in the last decades. Hopefully, you enjoyed this presentation. I'm, of course, available for any question.